What's up, everybody? This weekend during the SATAL competition, which for those of you who don't know what SATAL is, it is the Squadron Air-to-Air League, a structured air-to-air year-round competition that squadrons can join per season to compete for air-to-air bragging rights and even prizes. It was put on by the guys over at the 51st PVO Regiment and in conjunction with Splash One Gaming and the 104th Phoenix Squadron. If you guys haven't seen any of these matches, I highly recommend checking them out. The channel URL can be found in the description below. At the end of the match this weekend, Moltar and Merlin did an interview with Iron Mike and Gyrovag from Heatblur about the F-14 Tomcat. Moltar posted the entire match up on the DCS Worlds Events YouTube channel, and we talked and thought it might be ideal to cut up just the interview and slip it on my channel as well to help reach the masses. The interview is roughly 40 minutes long and pretty much in its entirety about the radar functionality and implementation. Anyway, if you haven't already, check out SATAL. The information is in the description below, and enjoy the interview.
Festival was prepared to handle how aggressive TAW came at them there at the end.
And while we watch these guys RTB, I'm going to drag the 104th gents down here. We've got Iron Mike and Gyrovag. I don't know who Gyrovag is in the grand scheme of things of Heatblur. He works for Heatblur, but I don't know what he does. So I'm going to drag these two guys down, and we'll get this interview and giveaway started.
User was moved to your channel. User was moved to your channel.
Aaron, Mike.
Hey, Moltar. Hey, Billy.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you guys?
Just wrapping up round 3. TAW took it in a pretty decisive fashion in round 3. It was pretty close going in there into that round, but man, TAW decided we've had enough and just took it to CNF going into this last remaining round.
Yeah, we've seen that. It was pretty impressive. I mean, TAW really turned around the table there and came out very dominantly against the Chinese Festival, who we all know is a very strong squadron, so that's a really good job by TAW and a pretty impressive and very decisive win, I would say. So congratulations to TAW for taking this one home, and of course as well to the Chinese Festival for a brilliant show nonetheless.
So do you mind, I see you brought Gyro with you, do you mind introducing him and letting us know what part he plays with Heatblur?
Yeah, so Gyrovag, I think he can also introduce himself, but just in short, Gyrovag is one of the major developers at Heatblur. He's an engineer. And I have a phone call. God damn it. Alright, got rid of that. So Gyro is doing a lot of systems development. He's responsible for the radar, for example, and the AUG-9, and all stuff connected to the Rio, multi-crew and so on. So very, very important part in Heatblur. And maybe Gyro, you can tell us yourself what you're doing and what your role is in Heatblur simulations.
Yeah, sure. Hi. Yeah, I mean, I'm working on a bunch of different things. Vehicle data display and technical information display, you know, related to the radar, especially the Rio side. Basically all the weapon stuff, you know, the various missiles and how to mount those onto the plane and how to release those, and that, you know, everything related to that, like different frequencies and all that kind of stuff. Data link with the and carrier and amongst the reporting themselves. And then even things like the pilot beta display and the physical display indicator and so on. A lot of stuff, really.
Gyro, you're breaking up a little bit. I'm not sure if it's your connection or your mic or what. You're just a little hard to understand. I just want to make sure it's easy for the viewers to understand what exactly you're saying as we move forward.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's better.
I don't have much further.
So
should be better now, right?
Yeah, it sounded better. So do you guys want to give us an update? Are you guys allowed to give us an update on anything with the Tomcat? I know we saw the awesome Intruder trailer last week, and we got some kind of non-solid news from some of you guys about maybe the Intruder becoming a full module going forward. eventually, but right now it's the AI. And then you guys released the teaser of the countdown that's now on your website, counting down to October 7th. So is there any information that you guys can give us in regards to the Tomcat, you know, the Intruder, or really anything pertaining to Heatblur going forward?
Well, I think, you know, we'd like to invite everybody to the reveal stream on the 7th, where we will basically show off everything concerning Tomcat. That doesn't mean that's the release date, just to be clear here. But stay tuned for the 7th and check in, because that's going to be the major reveal. Today we thought we will talk a little bit about the radar, maybe with data link, stuff like that, with GyroX, since this is his specialty. And if you all agree, I would just move on to that.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine with me. Is it okay if, you know, maybe the chat just types questions, so maybe if we have time, we may be able to answer them?
Yeah, unfortunately, Gyro is a little bit pressed. I mean, you all know we're in the pre-release phase, so it's a little bit stressy time for all the developers, so we're a little bit short on time. So, but we'll try to get in as much as possible, and we try to pick up as many questions from the users as we can. And maybe we just start with GyroX. So tell us a little bit how we model the radar, and maybe what the main differences between how the F-14 radar will be to, for example, how the F-15 radar is, or something like that.
Sure. I mean, I don't know that much about how the F-15 radar is implemented inside BTS, of course. I mean, we suspect it's fairly simplistic and so on, based on just the performance of it shown in the game. And obviously we've got, you know, constraints regarding how the stuff works inside DCS itself. I mean, it's not a full sort of E4 simulation in great detail or whatever, but basically, I mean, we get aircraft objects and ground objects and so on from DCS APIs, you know, based on certain elevation and azimuth angles and so on. You can query objects. And then on top of that, we basically post-process that stuff to simulate what the radar would be able to see and so on. So we do, you know, the normal line of sight calculations, check the range, you know, based on which mode you're in, limit what range you're able to see, you know, check the range rate, the Doppler frequencies, and limit that based on your mode as well. You know, things like checking for zero Doppler, you know, relative speed, checking for ground flutter, notching, all that kind of stuff. We basically post-process from what GPUs give us to try and give back a realistic radar picture, you know, what base information that we have, what the F-14 would have been able to do. So, I mean, basically the BTS APIs give you kind of like God mode. You know, you can query any object in the whole sphere, and we have to post-process that to make it seem realistic, like a radar would.
I think you're breaking up a little bit again, Gyro.
Okay, sorry about that.
Could you hear him well, Malta?
It's a little kind of all over the place. I don't know. I think it's his mic, but I think we just do the best that we can and see where it goes.
It's also Gyro lives pretty far from us, so might be an issue also as well, but we'll try to do the best. There's a question, is our radar, Raycaster radar, a true one, Gyro?
Yeah, I mean, for like the ground returns and so on, absolutely. It does raycasting, and it'll certainly, things will get occluded behind terrain and so on. So it's definitely raycasting in that sense. Yes. The ground returns are accurate in that sense. You know, things that are behind a hill or whatever, you won't be able to see them on the returns and that kind of thing.
That's very cool. And what kind of radar modes are we talking when we talk from Hawk 9 radar? Pulse scan, pulse Doppler, maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, it's got a whole bunch of modes. It's basically, from memory, there's two different pulse modes: a pulse search mode and, of course, a pulse single target track mode. And then there's, I think, 4 or so pulse Doppler modes. range while scan, track while scan, pulse Doppler search, and the pulse Doppler single target track. And then I guess in addition to that, there's basically the air-to-ground radar mode, which can do radar ranging, as well as quite low resolution, sort of not ground mapping in the sense of ground stabilized, but it can do ground returns, based on beam or breakcasting and so on. And that's basically a pulse mode as well. So it's got limited resolution and so on based on the beam width and sort of pulse compression that we simulate, that kind of thing.
So what, for example, are the main differences between a pulse scan and a pulse Doppler mode?
So the main thing really is that a pulse mode will literally send out a pulse of a certain pulse width, they call it, or pulse length, and measure the time it takes to get the return for that, and based on that you can get accurate ranging. But the downside to pulse mode is that you have a problem with ground clutter if you do it downward. The pulse Doppler mode will send out many pulses in quick succession, sort of a pulse repetition pattern, and look at the consecutive phase shift amongst consecutive returns. So obviously it doesn't really work that way in DCS, you have to simulate that. But the pulse Doppler mode basically gives you relative speed between you and the target. And based on that, you can filter out ground returns from that. So you can actually see target while looking down with the radar, where the pulse mode you would be getting, lots of ground returns and ground clutter, and you'd lose the target in the ground.
There is this theory in the community somehow, I've not with everybody, but a lot of people I come across with, they have this notion or idea that the Tomcat is unnotchable because of the pulse Doppler mode, and we know that's not true. Maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I can explain it a bit. There's basically two filters, and I mean, this probably applies to other aircraft too. I'm not sure to what extent they're modeled in other modules in DCS and so on. But there's basically two filters in the pulse Doppler mode which reject target. The one is the zero Doppler filter, which basically gets rid of targets that have got the same sort of relative speed that you do. So if you're chasing a plane and he's flying, more or less in the same direction as you are, more or less the same speed that you are, there's basically no Doppler shift, and you won't be able to see that target. So that's the one filter that's kind of always in place. The other one is a filter that tries to look for things that look like ground returns, essentially. So it's basically things that have got like negative own ground speed in the line of sight of the radar direction. So obviously, as the radar scans left and right and up and down, the relative speed will be different. It's not always your actual ground speed. It's less at the at wide angles and so on, just due to the way physics works. But basically, that filter can be disabled with look-up angles above 3 degrees or so. So, and that's the filter that normally planes will notch. If they're going to the beam with you, they will look the same as what ground returns would look. But if you're looking up at more than 3 degrees elevation angle, then they won't be able to notch you in that sense.
What are maybe the weaknesses of the radar when we speak, for example, of TWS, when you have two bandits flying very close together as a two-ship, for example? Will we be able to see that two-ship, or how reliable is that mode?
So basically, pretty much everything in radar design, and this is like more a fundamental thing than an F-14 related thing, but pretty much everything in radar design is trade-offs and compromises and so on. And in the pulse Doppler modes in F-14, they use very high PRF to get very good range rate and very good relative velocity measurements, basically. But the downside of that is in the high PRF mode, you can't use the pulse returns directly for range, so you don't get accurate range. So they have to use basically other mechanisms to find range. And the mechanism used in F-14 is called frequency modulation ranging. And that frequency modulation ranging has got quite poor range resolution. In the F-14, it's in the order of 5 nautical miles or so. So basically, targets that are flying close together within your beam width of around 2 degrees or something on F-14, and within that range of each other, say 5 nautical miles. In the track while scan mode, you won't be able to discern them as being multiple targets. More than one. You won't know the difference between more than one target and one target. So on your radar, on your tactical information display, you'll see one target shown. It might be a 2 or 3 ship in close formation. There's no way that you can know that, basically.
Can the data link from the E2 AWACS, for example, help with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's right now in the F-14 simulation, yes, it can. I mean, we get the targets from the E2 as it sees them. We don't, of course, know how accurately the E2 radar itself is modeled and whether the E2 would have been able to see that in real life or not. But we do get that information from DCS, from the E2 in DCS, so yes.
Speaking of that, I mean, the F-14 radar is obviously modeled very realistically, and it's going to be a very close to real-life representation of the radar. When we speak of that, and for example, take a look at the DDD, where we don't have range but just the closure rate, what does that mean? I think a lot of people are not very familiar with that concept, since we're all used to those very simplified radars like the F-15 or SC-27 and so on. What is the real difference between range rate or closure rate and true range?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the name kind of says it, right? Range rate is basically like the first derivative of range. It's like the rate of change of the range. So it's literally, if you're chasing a guy flying in the same direction as you at the same speed as you, then the range rate is basically 0 because the range isn't increasing or decreasing. So, range rate, closure rate, basically the same thing. And obviously range is your real range to the target. So, on the DDD in the pulse Doppler mode, as you say, it shows the range rate on the Y scale. In the pulse Doppler single target track, interestingly enough, it actually does show the range as well as the range rate on a separate scale to the left of the DDD. But generally, the pulse Doppler modes show only the range rate. But because the pulse Doppler modes do have that frequency modulation ranging that I talked about earlier, those targets do actually have a range, and they do get displayed on the tactical information display at the range and the angles relative to you. So you do still have a clear picture of how far away they are, which direction they're flying in, relative to yourself.
So in general, the OG9 and the TID, the tactical overlay display, do help a little bit with that. Does the Rio have more possibilities in order to accommodate for that? Or for example, if I see like blips on the DDD and some look like closer to the button or further away from the button, how am I able to more or less accurately interpret that picture?
So, I mean, the tactical information display is basically your main thing where you'll be interpreting the picture, because that shows each target at the range they are from you and the direction that they're flying in relative to you. So the tactical information display is your primary picture, really. The detailed data display, especially in the pulse Doppler mode, it's actually pretty difficult to sort of interpret it as a human. It's sort of unintuitive in a certain sense. But that does kind of help you to see at which points you might be losing targets, where they're getting close to 0 Doppler or where they're getting close to ground speed being able to be notched and that kind of thing. The pulse Doppler search mode in the F-14 has got the longest range in effect, but that does not do frequency modulation ranging, and it consequently cannot show any targets on a tactical information display. So in pulse Doppler search, you can see only range rate on a detailed data display, but you'll be able to detect targets, from very far away. You just won't be able to see how far away they actually are from you.
So basically, the Rio will have to know very well which modes to use at which time in order to get a good tactical picture and to be able to interpret that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're very far away from the action and you're not expecting anything, you go into maybe pulse Doppler search mode and you're really expecting to see nothing. And maybe if you start seeing things there, you can kind of get an idea whether they're closing or opening relative to you. And kind of like, obviously, if they're closing, you can kind of see okay, they've been closing for a certain amount of time, they must be getting close enough, and you can maybe switch to like a TWS mode or even RWS mode, and then you might be able to start getting a picture on your tactical information display if they're within range.
Apart from that incredible range of, I think it's 200 nautical miles, if I remember correctly, what other strengths would you say does the F-14 radar have?
Yeah, I mean, the 200 nautical miles, obviously that's that's like a marketing figure in a certain sense. I mean, the radar cross section of targets depends a bit on the attitude as well. So we stimulate all of that. So if a target is coming towards you or away from you or beaming you, that we stimulate different radar cross sections. So the range will change, and obviously bigger targets are easier to spot than smaller targets and that kind of thing. I mean, I guess in terms of the strength of the radar of that era, I think there was nothing in that era that was able to track 24 targets simultaneously in the track while scan mode, and be able to fire 6 Phoenix missiles at 6 targets simultaneously, and kind of keep everything still on the tactical information display and everything updated and so on. I mean, I guess weaknesses, as mentioned, that frequency modulation and ranging gives very poor range resolution. So I guess that's definitely a weakness. The other thing is that the zero Doppler and the ground flutter filters on the F-14 are quite wide in a sense. So I think targets will be able to maybe notch more easily than they might be able to on other radars. And it's kind of, as I said before, it's kind of hard to know how accurately like the F-15 and so on models that stuff, and whether it models it at all and so on. So I think in a certain sense, like the F-15 radar maybe has given people like a false picture of how good radars are. That actually even applies in general to many of the avionics things in the jet. I think a lot of things, realistic ways that things like the compasses and the inertial navigation, all those kind of things work, RWR and all that kind of stuff is a lot worse in real life than people maybe get an idea in DCS from.
You mentioned the AIM-54, which I think is also a core interest of the community, of course, how strong it's going to be and so on and so on. I don't think we need to go into that in particular because we already talked about the Phoenix, and Tom did a great interview with Ralph that everybody can check out on YouTube about the AIM-54 Phoenix and its intricacies if you want. But there was one good question way above from the community here in the stream chat was, if you fire an AIM-54 Phoenix in TWS and you lose lock in TWS, could you then switch to PDSTT or PSTT and have that fired AIM-54 reacquire the target and continue tracking it?
I mean, I guess there's several answers to that question. The one thing is, I mean, if you're losing it in TWS, then there's a reason why you've lost it in TWS, and you probably won't be able to get PDSTT on it anyway at that point. But the thing is, the F-14 itself commands the missile with a data link, and in TWS, when it loses track, or when it loses returns of that target, it can continue predicting the target motion based on previous sightings and previous velocity and so on. So it kind of depends. If the target wasn't aware that it's being launched on and it continues flying in a straight line, the F-14 can continue predicting where the target would be and continue sending navigation updates to the missile's INS system over the data link. And at some point, the missile gets close enough to the target and puts it on its active mode, its own radar. And if the target is still more or less where it was predicted to be, the radar, on the active Phoenix will find the target and will get it. But obviously, if the target has moved away and F-14 has lost TWS track and the target is going in a different direction to what the F-14 thought it was going, then the missile will go to a different place, and when it goes active, the target won't be there, and the missile will be lost, basically.
So there are a few modes where the missile goes active. For example, if you fire it in ACM, it's instantly active and so on. How do the active modes work with the AIM-54, or in which modes, and when does it go active? Maybe we could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, as you said, in ACM mode, it'll be active as soon as you fire it. So that's like a sort of a dogfight mode, air combat maneuver mode. There's a button specifically that the pilot can press as well on his ACM panel. Hello, you guys still there?
Yeah, I think Malta, you're.
Yeah, it's good. I just turned off something. You're good.
Okay, great. Sorry, just suddenly sounded like silence. And there's a button that the pilot can specifically press on his weapons panel in front of him to switch the missiles to bore sight mode, and that goes for Sidewinder, Phoenix, and Sparrow. And in that mode, the Phoenix will also be active immediately. And then basically, other than that, normally the weapons control system on the F-14 will control when the Phoenix goes active, which will usually be when it's within a certain range of where it thinks the target is.
Then in TWS mode, in the F-15, we're used to a very convenient pitbull timer, so we know when the missile goes pitbull, and then we know it's active, and that indicates the pilot it's a fire and forget from this point. In the F-14, that's a little bit different. Maybe you could explain how.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any information indicating that there's any kind of timer like that in the F-14. What it does do is it has kind of like internal timer that once it's launched a missile on a target, it will do things like continue to predict that target for longer than it normally would if it loses TWS lock. Like normally, it will drop the target from the display, I think, in 6 seconds or something, or 10 seconds or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But if it knows it's got a missile in air towards a specific target, it will continue predicting that target for, I think, up to 60 seconds or something to that effect, even if it does lose lock, tracking on that target. But yeah, as I said, I'm not aware of any indication of time until pitbull or anything like that.
And I think there is another function where the Rio can set the missiles to active. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. There is a switch that the Rio has as well, which is basically functions similar to that bore sight switch that I mentioned that the pilot has.
And a last one is, I think, if you fire it in PSTT at a certain range, it also goes immediately active, correct?
Yes, that's correct. In pulse Doppler single target track, the missile is still kind of controlled by the F-14, but in the pulse mode, the F-14 doesn't really have data link to the missile anymore. So in pulse single target track, which is anyway a much shorter lock mode, the F-14 basically commands the seeker on the missile to be slave to the line of sight of the radar at launch time. So it already looks in the correct direction for the target, and as you say, it goes active immediately in that mode as well.
So, as you guys see, there are a lot of cool possibilities in order to fire the AIM-54 in an active mode under specific circumstances, or to have it guided more by the F-14 radar at the same time. So you have more choice actually in how the AIM-54 is going to be deployed. Contrary to the AIM-120, which is always basically the same. There's been a couple other questions. Maybe one question has been, I can answer that, will we have an extensive manual pre-release or on release? Yes, definitely. We're planning to have the manual for you guys ready and more or less finished already on release, or maybe even prior to that. It's not a promise, but definitely the plans are there, and we're working on finishing the manual. So big parts of the manual are done already, so that you guys can get crunching and learning the intricacies of the F-14 as early on as possible. Another question then that I'll give to you as well, Gyro, is how is the damage model of the F-14 going to be?
I mean, I guess as with the VIG and the damage modeling stuff is something that will probably come more towards the end. There's not all that much done right now yet, but we do have, internally in the systems code, we do have multiple possibilities for things that can get damaged in various ways, and we do plan to have a lot of depth in that area. So, for instance, the radar will have multiple different failure modes, from things like the radar antenna transmitter failing, or the gimbal failing and not being able to move up and down and left and right anymore, or having the pulse Doppler circuitry failing, or having the tactical information display or detailed data display independently failing, and that kind of stuff. So we do plan to have a lot of depth with that, but the integration of all that into damage caused from externally from the 3D model, that stuff is not done yet.
Another thing I think which is also very interesting in terms of damage and failures, apart from the engines, you guys remember we had a big engines updates on how the failures are done in Trust We Trust. You can check that out on the ED forums. But another thing which comes into play here is also the navigation and the INS, right? The gyroscopes and so on. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got a very, very extensive simulation, I think, of the INS system, and I think probably people that saw that update on the INS stuff will be able to see if you do a lot of heavy maneuvering and so on, your INS will get more and more out of alignment, and this affects things like if you get data link targets from an E2. It will have different positions of the targets than what you think you're getting. So you might have a different picture, especially if you're getting sort of your own radar targets on your tactical information display, but you're getting those same targets from the data link. If your INS is a little bit out of alignment or a lot out of alignment, then those targets won't be overlaid anymore. Whereas normally you would get a target that looks like it's both a sensor target and a data link target. Then also things like if you don't have a proper INS solution anymore due to damage or whatever the case may be, then you basically lose various abilities. You won't be able to do track while scan anymore. You won't be able to launch missiles, Phoenix missiles in that mode anymore. You will be degraded to only having active mode, which got a significantly shorter range and all this kind of stuff. So I think there will be very many sort of exciting, in the Chinese sense of exciting, possibilities for damage, affecting your aircraft.
Is that something that's going to bother the pilot in the rear all the time, or is there possibilities to avoid that kind of stuff, or what's going to be the frequency of that?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't get shot or whatever, then things will be generally okay, and the INS stuff. I mean, it's only really if you pull maneuvers that you're not supposed to be pulling anyway. If you sort of over G and over roll and that kind of stuff, where things can get a little bit out of whack. And it's not like things will totally break down either. It's just you'll get less accurate solutions. But I mean, when I was saying the Phoenix stop working if you don't have INS anymore, that'll be more like if something has been damaged and destroyed, or by battle damage and so on.
So in general, good piloting comes also into play. So the better you fly the F-14, the more you're avoiding these things, and that is kind of also an additional challenge when flying the F-14, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, right now we've obviously got little debug displays everywhere, which won't be in the release build and so on. But you can kind of see if you kind of fly towards the ground and do a very high G pull up and so on, you can kind of see like the INS, becoming suddenly much less accurate and so on.
Maybe we take a final question from the viewers: is which radar sources will contribute to the data link picture?
So right now, basically, it's the data link stuff. There's a thing that they call a tactical data link system that the F-14 used or was part of the network of. And that has got an airborne tactical data link system, which is basically the E2C, and naval tactical data link system, which is your forestal carrier class. There's also a third one which we've got basically no information on, called the marine tactical data link system. But this is a land-based thing, and it's unclear whether it was used much, or we didn't really have much information on it. So basically, we're just modeling contacts from the carrier and from E2C, and of course you need to tune your data link frequency to the right thing to be able to get information from that.
Right. Malta, Billy, you guys have any more questions?
I sure don't. You guys,
No,
I'm always just really appreciative that you guys come on and talk about all this stuff, and I think the viewership really appreciates it too.
yeah, I'll just mirror what Moltar said there. I really enjoy getting to hear all this stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, so basically you guys can see that the simulation of the F-14 really goes in depth as much as it can. I mean, it's probably one of those air-to-air modules that is gonna be, you know, modeled to an amount of realism that has never been seen before, you know, and that goes through all the aspects the F-14 has. I mean, radar, data link, INS, and so on, engine failures, and it's going to give a good challenge to all the players, in my opinion. Not only, you know, to deal with failures as something that's bugging them, but also to fly it as it was supposed to, and to really experience how it was to fly the F-14 in real life, and how to deal with these kind of intricacies it has, and also, you know, to show good pilotship in order to be able to operate the F-14 at its full capacity. There was one question, so on F-14 to F-14 data link, Gyro answered that. I'll just repeat that, yes, F-14s will have data link targets from other F-14s. And maybe, Malta, now we can move on to the giveaway, right?
Yeah, I think we can do the giveaway. If you don't mind answering like 1 or 2 questions, I'm going to turn the giveaway on, and they'll have like 3 minutes to enter it, just so you guys, we have something to talk about while they're doing that. So guys, I'm going to open the giveaway. The command to enter the giveaway is going to be !Heatblur. It's going to look like this. Don't enter yet because it's not open yet. You will see a message when it comes up. But here it is. We're opening it now. So you guys,
I have a question too. Maybe you guys could elaborate, you know, on the ejection seat process, especially with something like multi-crew. Like, how is that going to work? Say we're hit, we're going down, we need to eject. You know, what is the procedure for that between the 2 players in there?
That's a funny question. You will hear that from the answer, but I'll let Gyrovec answer that.
Yeah, I mean, so both the pilot and the Rio have got some control over the ejection sequence, obviously. There's actually a little lever in the back that the Rio controls, which determines whether if he ejects, whether it automatically triggers the pilot ejecting or only himself ejecting. And if that lever is in the position where it would eject both, then the Rio, if he ejects, he will be ejected, I think, first, and I think 100 or 200 milliseconds later, the pilot will get ejected. And I think someone recently posted that video with that, was it Cara Hultgreen or something, where she got killed. And that was the same situation in that video. The Rio ejected and managed to have a trajectory above the water, and by the time the pilot was ejected, she unfortunately went straight into the water and got killed.
Interesting. Oh, that's answered my question too. I was under the impression that it worked along the lines of that. It was awesome to hear you guys have it modeled in like that too. That's cool.
Yeah, so basically, whatever we could get information on, and I think we have the most extensive selection of information on the F-14 to date, apart from the Navy, of course, but all that is there more or less has been modeled to a realistic extent. I think there was also a story where a colonel was taken for a drive in the F-14, and during some maneuvers, he was unfortunately holding on to the ejection seat, and it wasn't set so that the pilot would command who ejects or not, and he ejected himself. Is that correct, Gyro, or am I fantasizing about something here?
I vaguely recall a story like that as well, but I can't remember the details. It sounds familiar.
Frankly, I believe I read this story on an aviation blog within the last week or two, and I think there's actually a photo of that guy, the pilot, flying back with no canopy, if my memory serves me correctly on that. I could be wrong.
That sounds familiar to me as well, yes.
Yeah,
great
it was
story.
kind of more a funny story because luckily nobody got injured during that. But you can imagine the pilot's surprise, taking Bernard for a ride, and boom, he ejects out of the back. I mean, yeah, that must be a really shocking experience.
All of a sudden, where'd he go?
Navy Captain Turkey Driver corrected us there. Thank you from the VF213. Thank you, Turkey Driver, for that update.
Yes, indeed.
And good luck to everybody. So Gyro's got to run. Do we have a winner so Gyro can announce him quickly before he jumps off?
Well, what's going to end up happening is we're on a 30-second delay, but I'll send Gyro the winner, but he can actually read it in chat because it's going to broadcast in chat since I'm using a bot just to make it so we don't cheat. So if Gyro just wants... Gyro, are you reading Twitch chat?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so you'll see the winner pop up in Twitch chat. So I'll go ahead and close the giveaway now. So
good luck, everybody.
And there's your winner. So it should be broadcast right there.
Where'd who go?
Do you see it, Gyro?
I don't see it yet.
Should be coming shortly.
It's there. I can see it.
Hasn't popped up for me yet.
Okay, apparently the winner is Max STV.
So Max STV, if you don't mind either, well, you can probably just PM me on Discord and we'll get that all sorted out for you. Does that work for you, Iron Mike?
Absolutely, or he PMs me on, I mean, we'll keep track. We have so far Empirical Madman, and then who was it the last time? Jesus, I forgot the name.
I don't remember who the last one was. I can look back through my Discord PMs, or I think he PM'd you on the...
He PM'd me, yeah. I have all the names written down, so in any case, Maxis TV, please PM Moltar, and if you can also PM me on ED forums. Congratulations for winning the F-14. Pretty sure you're going to enjoy it, and I think at this point we can say goodbye to Gyro because he really has got to run. Thank you a lot, Gyro, for answering all these interesting, giving us these interesting details, and for answering all the questions. I think it was a really good insight into the radar and its intricacies, and a lot more on the F-14. And thank you very much.
I hope the breaking up and the funny South African accent didn't affect it too much, but yeah, it was a pleasure.
No, you got the audio sorted and everything at the end. You were great.
Absolutely, it was fun chatting with you.
And the South African accent is just mighty sexy.
Indeed.
So thank you, Gyro, for being with us and connecting with the community here. And of course we will have another giveaway before the finals, guys, so stay tuned and check back in. And also thank you, Gyro, for your brilliant work at Heatblur Simulations, and which we all, by the way, will enjoy very soon, guys. We're not given any date yet here, but as we said, it's going to be 2018 for sure. So all of you will be able to test out all what Gyro told you today in a very, very short time in the F-14 yourselves.
Hey guys,
I'm excited.
I just want to thank you again, Iron Mike and Gyro, for coming on and taking your time to talk to the community, talk to us. I know everybody, like you said, to reiterate, is really excited about the F-14. You guys take your time to interact with the community, give modules away, and it's just, I think I speak for the community that it's nice to have a developer in DCS like you guys. So thank you again for everything that you guys have done so far. And thanks for taking your time to come chat with us today.
Yep, definitely appreciate it. Definitely enjoy seeing all the beautiful stuff you guys create.
So, guys, we're going to wrap it up there.
User disconnected
again,
from your
thank
channel.
you thanks to Heatblur for coming out and hanging out with us. It's always a great time having them out of here with us, but it's always a great time. So thanks for coming out and hanging out with us. It was a great match between CNF and Taw. Taw takes it 2-1. We had the great interview of Heatblur talking about the radar of the F-14, giving a module away, and Max STV wins and takes home a free Tomcat module when that comes out. Again, It's been fun. We got a new match next week, 1300 Zulu on Saturday, SF versus RVE. That's another matchup that's going to decide and be very decisive for Group B, and then we take a month off. The final tournament will start August 6th, right before the announcement coming from Heatblur. And that's all she wrote. Sorry, October 6th. And that's all she wrote. Awesome. Iron Mike, do you have anything to say closing before we go?
No, apart from congratulations Tor, and congratulations Chinese Festival for giving us a great show as well, of course. And thank you to all the viewers for coming in. And congratulations again to Maxis TV for the F14. And special thanks, of course, to you, Malter and Billy, for the extremely brilliant hosting and streaming work. We couldn't enjoy it more, so thanks to everybody and enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.
Billy, anything for you?
No, I think we're good. I think congrats to Chinese Festival and Tall, like everyone else has been saying, for wrapping up a good season. I think you know, they finished out their year strong and set themselves up for a good playoff run. So I'm excited for the playoffs, guys. I'm excited for next week. I think next week's going to be a really good matchup. Hoping to see everybody there.
Yeah, I agree. And guys, real quick, just to catch up on follows and stuff. Fabio, Zenlira, Prophet, Hornet, Voodoo, Icefire, X-Ray, and Hammer, thanks for the follows. And Hammer66 subscribed and Prime. Thanks, man. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed the show. It's been a good time. Catch us again next week, 1300 Zulu, SF versus RVE. Until then, guys, have a good one, and I'll see you guys next week.
See you.
Bye-bye.